Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, and welcome to the award-winning Power in Politics podcast. Today, we sit down with the chair of the New York State Democratic Committee, Jay Jacobs, talking about those primary elections where we saw the Democratic Socialists of America candidates, the Zohran Mamdani endorsed candidates, sweep those congressional races, those three that we looked at, and of course the rest of the state as well. So we ask him, what's that mean for the rest of the party? Is it going more to the left, or what is he going to try to do when we get to the general election when it comes to trying to take back power at the federal level, and the whole movement here by Zohran Mamdani, and if he'll be involved in all of that? So we talk more about that, more about the party and its stance when it comes to the federal administration, the Trump administration, if they should be doing more to stand up to Trump, as some have asked for at this point. I also ask him about redistricting and the polling surrounding all of that. Enjoy. Here today with Jay Jacobs. He's the chair of the New York State Democratic Committee. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously we're coming off of the Tuesday primary election here. What did the voters tell you?
Well, I think if you take a look at the fact that Tom DiNapoli, a moderate, long-term incumbent, ran statewide in the primaries and beat two candidates, happened to be progressive candidates, two candidates by more than 2-1. I think statewide, the Democratic Party is a moderate party. And I think that in certain districts, and you would expect this, you're going to have more progressive candidates having an advantage because that better represents those particular districts. Every district is different, but in totality, in the whole, New York State, I think, has demonstrated in the last primary that it's a pretty moderate party.
Do you think the makeup of those districts has changed at all, though? As we know, the primary is a very splice, right, of the voters.
Well, districts change all the time. And the fact is that, the demographics do shift, and you're going to have, and also the issues shift and the problems shift and change. And so that's going to be reflected in any election, a primary or a general election.
This was the first primary for Tom DiNapoli. Did the result, did the fact that that even happened surprise you in terms of him running that statewide race?
Well, no, the times are such that people are, generally unhappy. They want change. They're concerned with affordability, making ends meet. And these are important issues. So it doesn't surprise me the challengers are going to step up. And listen, I applaud them for doing it. I feel sorry that Tom, who's a great public servant, has done a great job for 19 years. I'm sorry that he had to go through that. But I think that it validates the work that he's done, having an outcome where you win by more than 2-1 against two challengers. I think that says an awful lot.
I talked to him yesterday. He used that same word, validation, at least from this side of the aisle. Of course, we still have a general election to go there. You told the New York Post recently, immediately after the primary, Israel-Palestine was the most important issue in those races in New York City you're alluding to when it comes to Democratic Socialists and Mamdani and back candidates winning there. Why?
I didn't say it was the most important. That's not what I said. I said it was a factor. Okay. And I believe it was a factor. There's no question about it. Because, look, the entire issue of the Palestinian plight in Gaza and the rest has been on the forefront of lots of people's minds, rightfully so. And particularly young people and particularly progressive individuals. And it's something they care deeply about. And so, it became a point of contention. I think it's unfortunate that really good incumbents, great incumbents like Dan Goldman and Adriano Espaillat lost their seats in part because of that. I wouldn't say it was the whole story, but that certainly is something that, I regret. But look, that's an issue that's going to have to get resolution. And until both parties, the Palestinians and the Israelis, come to terms with the fact that the only way to get peace in the Middle East is through a genuine two-state solution. Until that happens, you're going to have this contentiousness throughout. And the Netanyahu government, I think, is largely responsible for creating an environment where both in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, support for the state of Israel is dropping. And that's a shame because it really shouldn't. But I think, look, Prime Minister Netanyahu needs to take responsibility for that, needs to change their policies.
Does that all impact seeing the success of those candidates in those districts at this time, how you handle AIPAC money when it comes to funding these campaigns?
Look, I know a lot of people, want to villainize AIPAC. There are a lot of different public interest groups and PACs and the rest that pour money into campaigns. So I certainly am not going to stand here and criticize someone for standing up for their issues, the issues they feel are important. And I'm not going to vilify them. And I think that's really a mistake on the part of people. Focus on the issues, focus on the candidates, focus on the debate between us. But, vilification just is never something that I find productive.
Are you concerned that all voters are going to start making decisions based on that, though?
I don't think so. I think that's more inside politics. I think most voters don't give it a moment's thought of who's paying for what. Perhaps people would like them to, but I think for the most part, voters are concerned with their pocketbook issues. They're concerned with the high cost of rent and getting good housing somewhere near where they work, in a place where their children are going to get a good education. They're concerned with affordable quality health care. They're concerned with the price of food and the price of gasoline, and what the Trump administration has done between the tariffs, the war in Iran, and the closing of the Straits of Hormuz, what that's done to the prices that are going sky high. That's what I think voters care about. Who's paying for what advertisement? I think really that's just a small slice of people that are paying attention to that. And frankly, I think we got to pay attention to the bigger things that are important to voters.
You see a reaction from the other side of the aisle when you see these kinds of results, not just in New York. You've seen it in other places around the country. But after Zohran Mamdani won, you saw the Republicans. You've seen the president say it's turning into socialist, communist society in the city. Sharia law is going to take over. What do you make of that?
Well, it's scare tactics. And what it is simply is they cannot think about this for 2 seconds. I want every voter to just think about this for 2 seconds. They can't possibly run on the record. They can't possibly run and say, hey, look how much good we've done in the country in the past 2 years. Isn't it great? I ask voters, are we better off today than we were 2 years ago? They can't stand up and tell you that we are. So what do? They look to distract. And the way to distract is they have guilt by association. The fact that Zohran Mamdani became the mayor of the city of New York, and you have perhaps a Democratic Socialist that won in 1 or 2 congressional districts in the city of New York, doesn't mean that Tom Suozzi, the congressman from Nassau County, all of a sudden has become a socialist. I sure haven't. And certainly Governor Hochul, who will work with anybody and listen to anybody, she is a moderate centrist, and however, is pushing a moderate progressive agenda to make this state more affordable. So you got to look at the realities. And that's why Bruce Blakeman knows he can't win this election. He doesn't have the slightest chance. He's Trump's chief sycophant in New York State. I think he's doing more to try out an audition for either a job in the Trump administration after he loses, or perhaps he wants to be a commentator on Fox News. But he sure isn't going to end up governor of the state of New York.
I spoke with, it's interesting you bring up that sort of the coming to terms with moderates and the socialist, principles, if you will. I spoke with a Democrat who considers himself a moderate recently. He said, obviously, he has some of the same principles that you believe in and the same things, but he also said that he sees a growth in the DSA and people joining, and this sort of being a trend that could parallel MAGA in the Republican Party in terms of how influential it could become. Do you see that at all?
Yes, I do. And I see that because what Democrats need to do in this country, for the most part, I think Governor Hochul is doing it very well in New York, but in this country, which is what drives most of this interest in the DSA, the Democrats, it's incumbent upon the Democrats to come up with bold and exciting initiatives that go to the core of what I believe our mission should be. The mission of the Democratic Party, in my view, should be very simple. We're going to bring back the American dream for all Americans and ensure there's opportunity at all levels. That's what our mission should be. And we need to speak to proposals and ideas, bold ideas, new ideas that carry that forward. We have to take a look at capitalism. I'm a capitalist. I'm not a socialist. And I don't believe in socialism. I believe that socialism has failed in history each and every time it's been tried, and it continues to fail in the countries that continue to adopt it. But I believe in capitalism. But right now, American capitalism needs a fix because it's not working the way it was meant to work. And I think it's been really taken over by too much power in corporate interests. And frankly, I think we need to do something about that. The average person doesn't see a clear path to making ends meet in this country and making a better life for him or herself, or certainly their children. And that's worrisome. People are coming out of college and they don't have the opportunities to get the jobs they used to pay down the school debt that's becoming quite a burden on them. These are issues that Democrats need to champion. And if we do that, then we'll be competing with the DSA rather than complaining about them. I think that what the DSA does for us, what Working Families Party has done for us, which is positive, is they've given us a push. Because complacency and status quo is not going to satisfy the American electorate. And we've got to get moving as a Democratic Party. And I think we are. Kathy Hochul is doing it here in the state of New York. It's one thing after another. If people see and understand the policies she's been putting forward for affordability, whether it's bringing down car insurance prices, something as simple as getting cell phones out of the schools, so education is going to be actually more effective for the kids who go to school. And then the tax rebates and other things that she has done, more money for funding of education, keep property taxes down, working on energy costs. These are the things voters care about. And that's why Kathy Hochul, I think, is striking the right note here in New York. And we need to do it nationally. And that's going to be whatever it takes to counter what the DSA's attractiveness is, particularly to young voters.
Affordability has been such a big part of the message, right? The idea of the party being the working class party. We heard Bernie Sanders not long ago say he doesn't see that anymore in the Democrats. Is that something that you want to be known and associated with still, or has that changed?
No, it hasn't changed at all. And I've always believed that we are. But you know what? Sometimes I think the public, rightfully so, sees campaign contributions coming into our coffers and maybe votes that would favor working people being set aside or not taken up because of that, or they think it's because of that. I think we have to straighten that out. I think that we're the party of unions. We're the party that supports unions. We're the party that is responsible for the minimum wage, the 40-hour work week, you name it. Whatever it was that promoted a better life for working people in this country, it's always been championed by the Democrats, from Social Security to Medicare to Medicaid to Obamacare to unemployment insurance, disability insurance, and you name it. So I think we have to get back to that, and voters have to remember that, and we have to remind them of that. But we also have to champion proposals that go further than that. You can't rest on your laurels. You've always got to be coming up with new ideas, as I said before, that voters can embrace and be excited about. And then we're going to be winning elections, without a doubt.
You mentioned the word bold, and you brought that up to one of my colleagues recently, David Lombardo, on his podcast, which I thought was really interesting. We've got to be bolder. Are ideas the only place you think that needs to happen?
Well, I think ideas are the start, certainly. I think people want to know what you're going to do. And when you talk about things that are incremental and on the margins, I don't think it excites anybody. And frankly, even if you accomplish it, I don't know that it does what needs to be done in this country. We have a growing problem with income disparity. The inequality of income is getting bigger and bigger. That's something we've got to deal with on a nationwide basis. It's not to be dealt with necessarily just in the state of New York. That's not where we're going to get it done. It's nationally. And Trump, the one thing I will say about Trump, and it's unfortunate, of course, is that he's pushing us to a crisis. And it's only in crisis that you do get the voting public ready for some bold changes, which need to happen. And then I think everyone's lives will begin to improve. But the Democrats have to champion that. That's our responsibility. And we shouldn't be moaning and groaning about it. We shouldn't be wringing our hands. Let's step up to the plate, get these proposals out. Let's vet it. Don't think you're going to make everybody happy all of the time. Look, I certainly don't personally, but I understand that. I just do the best I can. And that's what we have to do as a party.
You mentioned President Trump here when it comes to that notion. And I do think of if we have heard from constituents when we've been getting ready for debates and things like this and saying, hey, we want our party to stand up to them and to that administration. And then it comes back to, I'm tired of the strongly worded letters from Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. Is that something you're tired of too?
No. Listen, people have to get realistic. I understand you're frustrated. I'm frustrated. I'm ready to pull my hair out with some of the nonsense the Trump administration does. But Democrats have been fighting. Chuck Schumer's been doing things in the Senate to fight back. We don't have the majority. If you don't have the votes, what do you want to do? We should go out and pick up the pitchforks and march on the White House? What would you expect? They're doing what we can do. The members of the House, Hakeem Jeffries, are doing an excellent job. We're doing it in the committees. even though in the House, even though we don't have a majority. So if the public wants the Democrats to take action, here's my suggestion. In November, vote Democratic. All right, then you're going to get a Democratic majority, and you watch the action we'll take. Investigations will start because we'll have the committee chairmanships. You can't do it without it. Then we'll start investigating. Then we'll start calling cabinet secretaries down and holding them in contempt when they don't come down and answer the questions. And we'll have some power. But without power, I don't advocate picking up the pitchforks. That's not the way American democracy was designed to work, nor should it work. But in terms of speaking up and speaking loudly, I know what our Democratic representatives have done. I know what Chuck Schumer's doing and the entire team, and I feel very good about that. And certainly Kathy Hochul and others, they've been as vocal as you can be countering Trump. And by the way, Kathy Hochul's been successful. She's won time and again against the Trump administration's initiatives to scale back progress here in New York State. So we're making good progress even without the power of the majority. But if voters want us to do more, give us the majority. And make Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House and Chuck Schumer the Majority Leader of the Senate, and then you'll see some real action.
And would that include a call for impeachment if that's the case?
I don't favor that. How do you like that? I don't favor it. Why? Because you're not going to have 2/3 of the Senate and you're not going to convict him, and we're going to go through the whole same nonsense again. And what happened the last two times? His poll numbers go up. What happened when they impeached Bill Clinton? His poll numbers went up. Look, what I want is I don't want performative actions, okay? I'm not looking to do a song and a dance that impresses people. I'm looking for action that gets stuff done. So let's focus productively in fighting this guy. If you have the votes to convict him, go ahead, impeach him. But if you don't, let's not go through the motions that are only going to build up his popularity and get his base feeling sorry for a guy that really has fleeced them all these years, and they don't want to take a look at it. I can't understand it. The corruption that's going on in the Trump administration by Trump himself and all of the nonsense, all of the lies, tearing down the East Wing of the White House. You have to be out of your mind to support this guy. I can't understand how they're doing it. But look, that's each voter makes their own decisions and own choices. And perhaps they don't want to admit that they were wrong in the first place. But I think what we need to do is get out and vote in large numbers, if you believe in it, and elect the Democrats in November. Then you'll see a fight, and it'll be not a performative fight. It'll be a fight that will make a real difference to the lives of everyday Americans.
Seeing the success of the DSA in New York City, how involved will Zohran Mamdani be in those elections in November?
Look, he's certainly got a place. Look, this is a Big Ten party. I disagree with Mayor Mamdani on a number of things, but I will tell you this about Mayor Mamdani. I'll tell you a couple of things. Number one, those people who call him an anti-Semite are wrong. I'm Jewish, and I understand very well the distinctions. He's not. He has his opinions on the Palestinian plight, and he has a right to that. I just wish he would voice it and do certain things differently, and I would wish he would support Israel's right to exist. But I don't believe he's anti-Semitic, number one. But number two, and most important, where's his heart? What does he really want? Okay, is he a bad guy looking to do bad things? No. I would say looking to do bad things are the MAGA Republicans. I would say that. But I wouldn't say looking to do bad things is Zohran Mamdani. All he wants is a little bit more for the people, the working people of the city of New York who are struggling and having such a tough time, finding proper housing, decent housing, if you will, and getting good schools for their kids. I mean, come on. What's he looking for? Now, we don't like some of the ideas that he proposes to get that done. Okay, I disagree with some of them too. But in his heart and what his motivation is, I'm not going to make any apologies for him. He's doing just fine. And look at the city of New York for all the scare tactics before he was elected. Boy, everybody was so worried what was going to happen to the city of New York. He's doing pretty well right now under Mayor Mamdani. So, there are things we can criticize, and I do. But on the whole, this isn't a bad guy. This is a good guy. I just disagree with some of the things he's trying to do. And yes, he should be involved in getting out the vote in areas where people respond to him and his message resonates. And I think he'll be very valuable.
Is that pushing the party a little bit farther to the left then, if he is going to be instrumental in this and in some ways?
I don't think so. I don't think so. What it is it's including everybody. Look, if you want to beat the MAGA Republicans and you want to win over Donald Trump, we have to get united. If we're going to be standing on yesterday's disputes and arguments, and that's where it's all about, what it's all about, then okay, we'll be divided and maybe we won't win the seats that we need. And then we'll all sit around moaning about what happened and why it happened. I think that the Democratic Socialists have got to take a step back and put their eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. This is all about winning. And then afterwards, then we'll hash out best we can. It's still a moderate party, but we'll listen. We have to sit down, listen to one another, respect each other's voices, take the vitriol out of our internal politics. I don't think it belongs there. I don't think it does anything good for anybody. And have a capacity to try to bring everybody together and understand what the bigger goal is. We have to end the Trump madness in this country and end that MAGA movement, which is destroying us on so many levels and frankly, hurting us internationally in ways that I think will impact for very many years.
One more on the November elections is that sort of that concept, because we obviously have New York 21 as a part of our viewing area. We've been covering it extensively, what's going to happen or what could happen there. And some of those in GOP say there's going to be efforts to try and connect the candidate there, Blake Gendebien, with DSA. How do you combat that? What do you say? What do you message to be able to speak to the voters in New York 21 about that?
Well, I mean, you could try to connect anybody to anybody you want. Maybe they want to connect me to Mao Zedong. I don't know. But the fact is there's no evidence of anything he said or what he proposes or who he is and what he stands for that would validate that. So, this is, again, another Republican effort to commit fraud on the voting public in that district by name calling, guilt by association that has no bearing on who this guy actually is. He's a moderate, from the farm community. People know him. They know what he's about. And I think it's going to backfire because I think voters are smarter than that. And they're just not going to stand for it any more than I take. Well, their candidate, I got to tell you, I don't have to do much. He is a radical, crazy. So, but what I would say is any number of the other candidates who are running as Republicans, are they all standing with Marjorie Taylor Greene or Boebert or some of these others? I don't know. But, it's just not the way politics should be played. You should be talking about the issues, talk about yourself. If somebody has voted a certain way or said something in particular that you think the voters need to know about, well, certainly say it. But name calling and trying to cast aspersions on people in these ad hominem attacks, it's nonsense. And the voters aren't going to buy it. They're sick of it. They've seen it every single election. First we were a de Blasio Democrat, then an AOC Democrat. Now we're a Mamdani Democrat. Who's coming next? So it's all garbage. And I think that, as I said, voters are smarter than that.
And this one's aside, this last question, it's about redistricting. There's a Siena poll this week saying 21% of the voters that they talked to say it would be good for New York. Does that change at all how you approach this or how you look at it when it comes to seeing if these lines should be redrawn and it will go up for the constitutional amendments and all that?
Well, I think we have a big job ahead of us to educate the public as to why we think it's important. And I don't blame the public for feeling that, fiddling around further is just not something that they're excited about. But I think there are good reasons for it. And I think that once the case is made, I think those numbers will be different. But we got to make the case, and we haven't done that yet.
All right. Jay Jacobs, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. You can always find us on our Power and Politics podcast page. Just search Power and Politics CBS 6 wherever you get your podcasts. It is free. Subscribe and like and give us a rating today so that way we can continue to grow and talk to more of the people that you want to hear from here on Power and Politics.